Hey guys, I hope everybody had a great weekend. Here this morning, going to give you some more proactive tips and updates to support your immune system. So one of the things I want to go over this morning, first, I want to start with really thanking all of our frontline health providers, nurses, ER doctors. They're really risking their lives out there to save us, you guys. I remember I spent at least 6 months in the ER rotation as part of my clinicals, and it's a tough job. And right now, a lot of my friends and colleagues who are currently in that position right now, every day I talk to them, they are feeling it. So the best message they have, again, for you is please stay home, stay away from people, social isolate. They're getting overwhelmed. Last night I spent 2 hours talking to one of my emergency med docs who's on the East Coast, basically going over strategies to protect themselves because they're freaking out with the volume that is happening right now and the problems that are coming. So again, I need to thank them as much as I can because they are fighting the fight. Now, what am I doing? Because we're still seeing patients from remotely, and then some of the patients who are really need our care to keep them out of the hospital are still getting some care here. And that's my passion right now, and that's my job, is to try to keep everybody out of the hospital, right? The hospitals are getting overwhelmed, and that's what we're here for. That's what our clinic is here for, and that's why we're available via telehealth. We are staying open so that we can help support you guys so you don't need to go to the hospital. We saw last week the order was made that all the non-urgent surgeries, procedures, everything of that sort were basically shut down. So right now is about the worst time to try to go to the hospital or try to go to a specialist because they're just swamped right now. So again, our service is every morning trying to give you guys some health tips, and also know that we are here to support you. So with that said, what do we got to talk about today? So a few things. One of them is vitamin D. There's some controversy, and the interesting thing is it's like every single day we have somebody digging up the one article that is an in vitro study that's showing, remember, in vitro means petri dish, that's showing that this natural agent is harmful and may make this worse. And it's interesting that we're seeing that paradigm and that freak out, because a lot of these natural agents, they've been around for a long time, and if we're going to learn something, we need to look back at what we did in the Spanish flu. And if you look back at the Spanish flu of 1918, the people that had the best success were your natural medical doctors, your naturopathic doctors, and your chiropractors for preventing disease or death related to that. And part of that was using things that were not suppressing the immune system. And they didn't have ventilators, they didn't have all this stuff. And what we had back then was aspirin, and aspirin was the big drug to give people to reduce their fevers. And that's why in one of my past episodes I talked about don't reduce the fever. It seems to be dangerous. And the same thing happened back then. A lot of aspirin was given and people were dying because they were suppressing the fever because the viremia was shooting up. The other thing we saw was people were dying because they were being overdosed on aspirin because we didn't know the dosage at that specific time. So very critical. A lot of the old things that we use are very, very powerful in medicine to get people through. I've already spoke with a few of my colleagues who have had to deal with this in their office in emergency situations, and they've had great outcomes. But again, if what we're trying to do is manage people to keep them out of the hospital, but if you have to be at the hospital when it's like, I can't breathe and it's an emergency situation, you have to be there. Otherwise, you don't go there. They don't have the room right now. So one of the agents I want to talk about today that's bringing up some controversy was vitamin D. Somebody said, well, vitamin D could potentially make this worse. And I looked at the study, and again, it's an in vitro study. It's very poorly done, and there's tons of other studies out there supporting that it is beneficial. And one of the specific molecules is calicidin, which I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but calicidin Calicidin, what it basically does is it prevents the entry of virus into your body. It's found in your mucous membranes, it's found somewhat on your skin, and basically it helps mount your immune system's response so the virus doesn't enter your system. Well, one of the controversies was if that gets too high, it creates a, quote, cytokine storm. Remember the same thing we talked about with elderberry syrup. Somebody made this comment, it causes a cytokine storm. And it's simply not true. Again, what it is doing is it is upregulating that molecule. However, it also can downregulate that molecule. So it is modulating that molecule. So again, my recommendation is still to keep your vitamin D levels up. So I stand by that. Again, I hate it when people are putting out this fake news to scare people. It's still a really good thing. Another one that maybe you haven't heard of that much is there's a specific molecule that's being focused on called NLRB3, and it's called an inflammasome. An inflammasome is a molecule in your body that senses a pathogen, a foreign invader. And what happens is if we get too much of that inflammasome, we are seeing that we are having a cytokine storm, meaning your immune system is overreacting and producing inflammasome. And this is a molecule that your immune system uses. Interestingly, what we are seeing is one molecule does decrease inflammasome. Guess what that molecule is? It's melatonin. So melatonin, which we've known helps people with as a strong antioxidant, which is extremely protective for the lungs, melatonin also downregulates that inflammasome. But again, it doesn't shut it off. So your body can still sense the pathogen. It just modulates it so it's not this extreme amount. Well, where do we get melatonin from? Well, you generate melatonin to be able to go to sleep. It's not just the supplement that you take. And if you get the maximum production of melatonin often between that midnight 3 a.m. level is when you get the maximum amount of melatonin. And the other thing that's interesting with melatonin is the younger you are, the more melatonin you typically produce. The older you get, the less melatonin you produce. So is this a coincidence why we may have some younger people that are teenagers or younger, children who are being less impacted by this, and the older we get, the more impactful we have. It's just a theory that's out there of why that may be happening, is it could be this molecule called inflammasome, which is controlled by melatonin. Now, you can take melatonin. It is a supplement, it's readily available. Most people take between 3 and 5 milligrams. However, just to give you an idea of what your body produces, a physiological dose is very low. It's 0.3 milligrams. Now, what if I'm not taking melatonin, or I don't want to take it, or it's not available? Well, some top foods that have high melatonin content are tart cherries, walnuts, mustard, ginger, and tomatoes. They're very high in melatonin content, so if you can't get the supplement, you can eat the foods. Again, melatonin has this action of suppressing inflammasome. It's also an antioxidant. So what we do know is when this bug gets in you, there's a lot of oxidative damage in the lungs, and your lungs are your weakest antioxidant system. So that's why, if you smoke or, inhale diesel fumes or whatever else, your lungs don't put up with that very long, and then people get COPD or other bad things happen. Well, this bug, when it gets in there, your body naturally produces reactive oxygen species to kill these things. But if it gets too much, it causes collateral damage or damage to healthy tissues, and then you drown in your fluids. So what melatonin does is it helps control that oxidative bloom so it doesn't exceed itself. Another benefit is melatonin decreases your blood pressure. So if you're not sleeping at night or not producing melatonin, your blood pressure may creep up. Yeah. So melatonin does that as well. So the other key thing with melatonin, it's based on your sleep. So if you're a shift worker, you might want to take something to at least get your sleep balanced. If you're trying to stay up late at night researching this and panicking, That's also not helping your immune system. You need the sleep. You need the melatonin to be produced. And another big key factor, light. Remember those sleep-awake lights that we always prescribe people when it's dark and gray around here in the Pacific Northwest? We say use this in the morning. The reason we say use it in the morning is your body's sensing darkness and it's still producing a lot of melatonin, and then you're groggy and tired in the morning. Light burns off that melatonin. That's even when your eyes are closed. So guess what that means? Any light source that is in your bedrooms at night is suppressing your own production of melatonin. That could be a night light, that can be some charger light, that can be your alarm clock, that could be your phone sitting next to you. That all suppresses melatonin. What else suppresses melatonin? If you're on your phone, which has a lot of blue light glaring on you right before bed, that's also blunting your melatonin production. So tips to keep your melatonin production up: eat those foods that I talked about and keep the light sources out of the bedroom. That's really key to producing your own melatonin. What else do we see inhibiting this, these inflammasomes? One is nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is something that you produce to drop your blood pressure. It also is produced when you get aroused and you get an erection. It also protects your heart. And we know that nitric oxide, one of the foods that's the richest in helping you produce nitric oxide is beets. Beets increase nitric oxide content, and nitric oxide calms inflammasomes down. Nitric oxide also dilates your blood vessels as well. That's really cool, right? And then finally, another one that inhibits inflammasomes is vitamin C, ascorbic acid. I mentioned it a little bit, and then I'm going to do a video later this week that's specifically on how we're using vitamin C orally and IV in the acute presentations as well. So yeah, vitamin C inhibits inflammasomes as well. So I hope you guys are getting a lot of good information. Again, tomorrow, Dr. Michison, who also works at the clinic, is going to give you some tips on hydrotherapy, some old tips we used in 1918 with the Spanish flu to get people through this. That is tips to manage your fever if you do get this and get you well. So he's going to run through all the processes of that tomorrow, and then later this week, I'm going to be talking more about curcumin, vitamin C, and also some gut health. And we're just going to keep going on with this. And I'll keep you updated as much as I can. Again, I have a bunch of colleagues who are currently in the throes of it, in the emergency rooms, who are updating me with what they have. And yeah, this is real, guys. You know, my emergency docs are really being pushed right now. They're reaching out to me saying, hey, what tricks do you have to protect myself? Because everybody's going through this. So the best information we can give you is right now, the most important thing you can do is your health. Your health is number one, and proactive health is number one to keeping you from a hospital visit or an economic crisis. Your health is the most valuable thing you have right now. All right. Have a good day, guys. We'll talk later.